wherever it is you want to get to in this country as an immigrant, you can get there. It's a thing of mentorship and also understanding that the people who are there, yes, they have the skills, yes, they have the competencies, yes, they have the educational qualification, but they don't have two heads. They have that mentality to get there, and that's one thing that I'll continue to embrace.
Welcome to the Thriving Immigrant Podcast with Paul Adeyeye. This is where we share powerful stories of resilience, reinvention, transformation, and success. So whether you're a new immigrant, navigating a new life, or an aspiring entrepreneur looking for inspiration, this podcast is for you. Join me as we dive into real conversations with incredible individuals who have turned challenges into opportunities. Let's learn, grow, and thrive together. Cheers to a life of abundance. Welcome to the Thriving Immigrant Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Adeyeye. First of all, thank you for tuning in once again. And if this is your first time of joining this podcast, please subscribe and share with someone. I've got an incredible guest on the show. He's a big fish. My guest today is the perfect definition of the thriving immigrant. It needs no introduction. His name is Babatunde Omotoye. Most of you know him as Tunde Tash. He is the founder of HumanSquad, Schooliply, and I think he's also the co-founder of Travelly HQ.
Correct.
He has done fantastically well for himself, left Nigeria over a decade ago, and has built an amazing life. And I call him the trailblazer, the pace setter. He has done so many wonderful things within that 10 years of migrating to Canada. And he is one of the most respected, trusted, and influential persons in the Nigerian community in Canada, even beyond the Nigerian or the African community. Very kind and always ready to help. This bow is just coming from my head. I know he has other things about him and what he has done in Canada. But join me in welcoming Tunde Tash to the Thriving Immigrant Podcast. I don't have a bell, but let me ring.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
Welcome, Tunde Tash. I'm so glad to have you on this podcast. This conversation, I think we ought to have done this maybe like a year ago. Yeah. So thank you for tuning in. Welcome, and welcome.
Thank you so much, Paul. Really amazing to be here. It's an opportunity to be here. Thanks for counting me worthy of being on your podcast. I can't wait to, delve into, some of the questions and provide, some of the experiences. I'm sure one or two people will definitely have something to pick from this and somehow either utilize it or apply that to their, either work or business and see how it also helps them.
Right. Absolutely. So I know you've shared your story a few times online about how you moved. I've read your story about how you left Mushin, all the things you've done in the past.
Yes.
For someone listening to you for the first time, would you like to walk us through your immigration journey?
Definitely.
How did you learn about Canada?
Definitely.
And why Canada?
Definitely. So Canada was not, again, for me, was not one of those things that one planned. I didn't plan to come to Canada. I actually wasn't even planning to leave my country, my home country, Nigeria, in the first place. It wasn't always in my radar. It wasn't part of my plans. Mine was just to, work up through the corporate ladder after I found my first professional job. And I was like, you know what? I love the job. I was a human resources officer, and then I moved up to human resources associate. And while I was working there, I was enjoying that career. I did enjoy that career, by the way. It was one of the building blocks and building foundation of the corporate world for me. However, there was something happened. I think 2 years into that job, where I got robbed at gunpoint. My wife and I, my now wife, who was my girlfriend then, were together and we got robbed. The thieves who robbed us even put us in the car, covered our face and drove us around and whatnot. Cut the long story short, that really affected me psychologically and not to say people don't go through that in some parts of the world and it's not an excuse to leave your country, but I think many of the things that happened during that period, it just solidified the reason to say, okay, you know what, if this opportunity came, I would leave. And what opportunity came back then was I had somebody who had visited Nigeria, it's a family friend to having that conversation like, okay, what do you do and what now? Okay, I'm currently my the human resources field. I'm a HR associate now because I've gotten promotion from an officer to an associate, and from there it was like, okay, there might be opportunity if you ever want to study in Canada. Maybe you want to look into it. I know a school that could offer you good admission, human resources management, and I said, okay, why not? Let me let me look into that, and I did. And the way everything happened, it wasn't something where I'd been saying, "Oh, this is what I'm going to do." No, it was just okay. I submitted, and then the admission came out, and I did the visa application, submitted. It came out. So, okay, you know what? It came, so it just means I have to go, right? And it also came with that lack of preparation, where again, for somebody who hadn't been planning, that means you were also not putting any funds towards anything, right? And
Right.
back then it was such a time when proof of fund definitely was needed, and thankfully I'd submitted the proof of funds and whatnot, but it wasn't so strict back then to see that, okay, you've paid part of your tuition, you have tuition receipt and what. I know I paid maybe part of my tuition back then, which was just really a deposit, right? So that came with the difficulty of coming here and now wanting to now figure it out, right? Which for me and for many students back then also was come here and see if you could work your 20 hours. You're only eligible for 20. You're only eligible to 20 hours, right? Work for 20 hours and see how you could, take part of that fund, right, towards your tuition, but it was never enough, right? And that's why in some cases you look at your program, you look for opportunities to say, is there a possibility of deferring maybe a few months, maybe 2 months, 3 months, deferring, ensuring that you're still within that requirement of being in school, but ensuring that you do now have a little bit more time, right, to explore options of, getting that funds, which, sort of later started to, everything started to sort of just fall in place during that period. And then I'd reach out back home to let them know that, hey, it's not easy over here. Got a little bit of support from home as well, which also helped me to, be able to sort out some of those tuition issue. So yeah, so I think that was what really spurred me coming to Canada. I don't know if I probably would still be in Nigeria if the conversation of Canada never happened. Because again, even after that occurrence, I didn't look at it and say, "Oh, where can I go to?" No. I was still in Lagos. I was still in Nigeria.
Yeah.
I was just a little bit more vulnerable at that point in time, right? And the only option that came to me around that time was a conversation of Canada from someone, and I say, you know what, maybe I should give it a try, and it just happened, right? And that happened. So I came here as an international student, and after 1 year, my program was 1 year, so I did a 1 year program. I studied human resources management at Conestoga College, and after that program, thankfully my program had a co-op, attached to that program. But I got a co-op, which we always call internship in Nigeria. Right? So I
Yeah.
got an internship at Corporators Insurance, which is one of the biggest insurance company in Canada, in Guelph, which was in Guelph. So I was there. I was in Guelph for about maybe 2 years, give or take. And while I was there, I was able to get my work permit, right, postgraduate work permit. And during that period also, I was able to get my 1 year work experience, which helped me to get my PR through Canadian Experience class. And through that, became PR and then later transitioned to citizen. But during the course of my working, immediately I finished my internship and I got a full-time job at Corporators. I went back home to get married and then got married. My wife came to Canada with me, and then we just started our journey like that. So that's really my immigration journey. It's been
Wow.
I would say that it's been both ups and downs in Canada for sure, right? It's not as green as many people paint it, right? You have your fair share of the hardship of an immigrant, either through job seeking or through trying to fit into the, general Canadian populace, or finding your feet, or really understanding why am I actually here, right? And not just seeing yourself as, I'm an outsider and I'll just go with the flow, right? So yeah, so that's really my immigration journey.
Well, thank you, Tunde, for being vulnerable and sharing all that. You said a lot of things, and I'm glad that you mentioned that it has not been rosy for you, because I know you share some of your stories online, but when people see you, they will just be like, this guy, maybe this guy's been lucky. Like, I don't know how many years you spent before you before you founded your company.
Yeah.
But there's something about your story that I think I can relate with, the robbery. And I'm sorry to hear that you went through that traumatic experience. So in my own case too, I didn't even know anything about Canada or you guys. I just felt like the only thing I could do for myself was to do my job well, grow in my career, and make like a good amount of money so I could travel and come back.
Yes.
But when I had my first son in Nigeria, before we had him, NSAS harassed me. Not NSAS, sorry, I said NSAS, not NSAS, SARS themselves.
Yeah, that's
So they did, I don't want to go into that story, but it was a very traumatic experience. And my wife was pregnant.
Oh.
So when we now had my baby, for the first time, the doctor called me and gave me the boy. And I was looking at the guy like, boy, I'm now a father. Like, I felt so responsible and accountable. But what really helped me was this. I belong to a WhatsApp group of my secondary school guys, my university guys. And every time anyone have anything to celebrate, they always mention in that group. And those who have money would send money to just say congratulations. But I didn't know who was sending money until it was my turn. Some people sent me money. Some people gave me verbal congratulations. When I looked at the people who sent me money, 90%, let me say 80% of them had plus something that was different from plus 234. And I said, oh, something must be right outside this place. And I said, I think there's a message here that I think I should raise this child in a larger surface area of law. I'm not saying the people in Nigeria did not want to send me money, but they probably couldn't afford to. Let me look for a better place to raise this guy so that he can afford to send money to his people in the future. But I like your story, and I just want to say, God bless the person through your wife who talked to you about Canada.
Yeah.
And that's just some ripple effects of being in a good relationship. Like, they trusted you and they helped you, and you were able to also bring your wife. So, okay. You've been around for a while. Your story is very inspiring because you came as an international student.
Correct.
You transitioned to getting your work permit, and you became a PR, you became a citizen. Out of curiosity, what mental shifts did you experience? Because coming as an international student, I believe you must have gone through some survival phase.
Correct.
And maybe did it prevent you from dreaming? You're now an entrepreneur. You've done so well for yourself. So what mental shifts did you experience?
Did that period prevent me from dreaming? I would say no, it didn't, but it prevented me from tapping into opportunities early on. Right. When I look at companies like Apply Board, which is now worth, billions of dollars, right? Apply Board was launched by three brothers who also came into Canada as international students. They came from Iran. But guess what? Apply Board was launched the year I was struggling as an international student. Yeah, because that year I wasn't focused on anything. I wasn't trying to launch anything. I wasn't trying to understand anything. I was just focused on being an international student, working towards getting my internship, working towards getting good grades, working towards keeping my 20-hour per week shift so that I can pay my bills. Those were the things I was concentrating on, right? So I would say that period definitely did not make me, not necessarily shape my mental awareness as to, hey, I can make it. No, it didn't do that. But what I would say, it robbed me of also looking out for other opportunities that might have been available back then that I didn't try to tap into. And if you look at it, Schooliply was launched in 2022, which was like 7 years, or is that it? Yeah. 7 years after.
7 years after you landed.
After I had landed, right? And again, so 7 years late into that opportunity, right? Which again, the market had already shifted. A lot of things have changed. You're now even competing much more with so many players in the system. Imagine that I had that idea back then in 2015 when I was, trying to really be an international student without really thinking of other opportunities. I feel like perhaps it would have been a different story entirely. However, though, I would say one mental shift that continues to work for me or do it for me is that it's not possible for you to come here with the attitude of this can be possible and not actually get something done, right? For instance, as an international student, when I was doing my 20-hour per shift jobs, I met a lot of people who were working in factories, right? Not to say factory job isn't okay. Of course, there are a lot of people that have done very much well for themselves. But then again, for somebody who was educated, who that wasn't my field, I needed to go to where my field was so that I could work in corporate and things like that. I met people in those jobs that would tell me that, hey, you have this kind of job, it's paying you $13 an hour, $12 an hour. Take it, like hold on to it. This is the
What are
best
you
you can
looking
get
for?
as an immigrant. Like these are people telling me that, but that was their reality. But that wasn't my own reality, and I was not going to accept it. Right. And I think one key mental shift also that worked for me was I've been in that environment for a while, right? Working as an international student, doing my 20-hour per week shift. I'd been in that environment for a while, and I did not allow that environment to dictate or to, stampede that this is where I can be, right? But one mental shift that really changed it for me was when I was doing my interviews, right? During the period of my interview for internship, I got to the first place I had interviewed, again, there wasn't so much diversity. There was actually no diversity in the people, the panel that interviewed me. They were not, no, there was no Indian or black person as part of the people who interviewed me. The second place, the same thing. The third place, the fourth place I went to, which was actually the place where I got my internship, which was Corporators Insurance. While waiting at the lobby, right, for my interview to start, I heard the elevator open and I looked to my right. And when that elevator opened, was three people coming out from that elevator. And one of them was a black man, right? And he had the company, ID card around his neck. And it was like a light bulb for me because, again, it was the first time. Maybe I wasn't going out too much. Maybe, I'm sure there are a lot of black people, even much more, from in different corporate places. But maybe because I hadn't seen so much back then. So seeing that man then at corporators, I was like, what? So a black man can work in this kind of head up in this place? I was like, then I have to get this job, right? So I went into that interview as a different person. I wowed them. I did really well. And I wasn't the only person that got interviewed from my class. It was about four of us that got interviewed from my class. And I'm talking of like A-list stellar students, right? But as fate will have it, I got that internship with Corporators Insurance, right? So those were sort of the early, I would say, mental shift that gave me that that attitude, that continued attitude that, wherever it is you want to get to in this country as an immigrant, you can get there. It's a thing of mentorship and also understanding that the people who are there, yes, they have the skills, yes, they have the competencies, yes, they have the educational qualification, but they don't have two heads. They have that mentality to get there. And that's one thing that I'll continue to embrace.
Wow, that's very profound. Thank you for sharing. And like I tell people that when you succeed as an immigrant, you don't even have an idea how many people you are influencing or you are inspiring. True. I'm not sure if you had any conversation with that guy.
Never did.
You never did, but that guy inspired you. So
exactly.
Yeah, so that's why it's important for us to do well. And when we do well, let's be proud about it. Let's showcase it so that we can inspire other people. Amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you. You said something about starting late after 7 years, and I just want to take you back. Do you think, with what you know now,
yes,
how important is speed when an idea pops in your head?
That's a good question. Speed is very important, but at the same time is speed with the right people and speed with the right infrastructure, right? Because you have an idea early doesn't also mean that, you will be the most successful in that field. And I'll give you a very good example. Number one is Ping Express. When we came into Canada, Ping Express was what, at least around 2015, 2016, Ping Express was what we were using to send money back home, right? Ping Express, very early, they came as the money transfer and they were competing with World Remit. But Ping Express came as the mobile version of money transfer apps, right? And they were helping to do that. But guess what? Ping Express packed up around 2019, 2020. And then
I'm just hearing about it
yeah,
for
you
the
just
first
you
time.
see, and then came in Lemonade Finance, right? So Ping Express was the first in the game, but not necessarily the most successful in the game. And today, Ping Express is no more in existence, and they had an SEC issue in US, right? And so the company had to close and whatnot, right? But yeah, so I would say speed is very important, but it's speed at the right time also, right? And with the right people. You need the right people on your team to work with you, people who understand the vision and also understanding the infrastructure, what you're trying to build. Assuming that Schooliply had come in 7 years earlier, for sure, maybe I might even be too early back then. Maybe I probably wouldn't have the knowledge of raising capital, what do you call it now, what accelerator I should apply to. I probably would have run it like any other traditional business, which I know that some people also running it back then that way, right? So I would say yes, starting early, very important. But speed is very important, which was your particular question, but speed at the right time also is very important, right? Yeah.
Thank you, because you don't want to be running like headless chicken without direction.
Exactly.
So now I'm happy you talked about Schooliply, and I know you also founded HumanSquad.
Correct.
I remember when you shared on LinkedIn that you are done with 9 to 5. I was like, in my head, I was just trying to imagine like how much has this guy raised? Like this guy must be in millions for him to have just woken up and said that, you know what, I'm done. How did you navigate founding a company, a tech company in Canada? And I think you just got a very high level role
Correct.
with a company.
That's
I think you only spent like a year.
Yes, that's
because we were just celebrating that one, and you said, you know what, I'm done.
That's true. You got
So
you got it all.
yeah. So for someone listening to you right now, maybe is also thinking of starting his own business. What were the things that you considered before taking that bold step of saying, I'm done?
Good question. I think one important thing is capital, right? If you do not have enough capital or your business is not sustainable enough to pay all your bills every month and you have 6 months runway, right? That business itself is what is providing, not from your savings, not from your salary. If that business is the one providing it, that means you're getting ready to actually be able to leave your job, right? Without that, I won't advise anybody to just up and leave, especially if you're in a country where you have mortgage, you have your car bill, exactly, you have your month-on-month bills, your gas, your hydro, everything is there, phone bill, everything.
Some black tax.
Exactly, everything is there. House, even your property tax too is there, right? So everything is there.
Yeah.
So if you are in that kind of position where your job is what is sustaining you to continue to live a life without any external capital, then you are not ready to necessarily leave your job full time to go do your business. I think for me, what really spurred me to leave at that point in time also was, if you remember very well, we launched HumanSquad in 2020, right? And when we launched HumanSquad, it was with the goal of helping intending immigrants that were looking to migrate primarily at first back then to Canada, connect them to regulated Canadian immigration consultants, right? That was the primary goal back then. And then it evolved to many other things. It also evolved and gave birth to Schooliply, gave birth to Travelly, right? While also still in the core of settlement and education business. And while I had gotten my senior role, which you mentioned, right, was, I would say that was the highest level of my career growth in Canada, right, when I got that role. However, though, it was also during that period that I got an investment from a venture capital in the US, right? So I weighed that option as at that time. And what I had also noticed is with that type of senior role in Canada, then your job is no more 9 to 5. Your job becomes 7, right?
9 to 9.
Exactly. Which means it's from dusk to dawn. Like you are waking up in the morning, that's what you are doing. You are finishing late even after everybody have closed, because now you're working with like VP, more responsibility, right, that came into. So I also did not now have time to focus on the business, and I was now seeing how it was also affecting. And when you get VC fund, you are no more, your own
it's no longer about you.
Exactly. It's now
Yeah.
about that venture capital, because you also have to give them, quarterly update as to how the business is doing, what are the tweaks you are making, how are you scaling and whatnot, right? And I just weighed the option as at that point, and I said, you know what? I guess, let me go and give this a try. And something I always said is, for me, it's a thing of, if I think of something that I want to try, if I don't try that thing, I won't sleep well at night, right? If I don't at least try, let it burn me. I'm okay if it burns me, because I will learn my lesson, right? But at least let me try. Not trying is what will actually eat me up, forever. And I've always wanted to see what it looks like running your business by yourself and not being a 9 to 5, right? At least let me give it a try. Let me see how far can I scale this. What are the opportunities out there, running this business just fully as a full-time entrepreneur. And I think, I went in there with that hopes, right? And that expectation. Of course, there were a lot of wins. There were also a lot of lessons learned. I wouldn't say there are losses, but a lot of lessons learned through that journey. But yeah, I think that was what spurred me to really say, hey, you know what? I'm leaving this 9 to 5 and I'm going to face this thing full time.
Amazing. Wow. Congratulations on all the things you've achieved.
You.
I've learned so much from your story, and I know someone too is learning from that story.
Thank you.
Thank you for being vulnerable with us.
you.
So, okay. I have a few questions before we call it today. If you are not following Tunde Tash, I don't even think I need to promote Tunde Tash anymore. You can find him on X, on Instagram. I think he has reduced the way he interacts on Twitter lately.
I have. You notice a lot of things, Paul. You don't know too much. Yeah, I don't interact so much on Twitter anymore. That unfortunately has become a little bit of toxic place, and many people are just using it for traction, just so that they can make money from Elon Musk and all that. Yeah, it's not as genuine as it used to be before, where you are just sharing without necessarily trying to make money off the platform, right?
Yeah, that's true. But you can find him on Instagram, on LinkedIn. In fact, just Google his name, you will find Tunde Tash everywhere. One of the most resourceful individual in Canada, like everything. I remember how I got my second job, and it's very interesting because my second job is a little bit dramatic. When I came to Canada, I started following you before we landed, and I was any tweet from Tunde Tash, I will bookmark. When I get home, I will read. We bookmark. When I get home, I will read. I had gotten my first job through someone who came to install internet. I worked for Rogers for a while, and I knew I wanted more. So I was always looking out for opportunities. I would check trucks because everything was strange. So any truck driving, branded truck, I will look for the name, I will Google it. So one day I saw this company and I checked them out. I realized they were like 20 minutes from my home in Brampton. And I said, oh, this company looks good. I saw all the reviews, fine. The following morning, I dressed well, wore a good suit, nice tie. The color, I used the branded color of the company for my tie. I walked in around 8 o'clock and they had not opened. So when they opened, maybe because I drove a good car, they gave me audience. And I was speaking to the receptionist. I was like, I would like to work with this company. I have my resume. And she was telling me that, okay, you need to go online. You can't just, come. You have to apply online. So, and I said, okay, no problem. On my way out, I was just about leaving the receptionist. So one guy came in and the guy was like, oh, you look sharp. Who are you? What do you want? I said, oh, my name is Paul. I would like to work with this company. He said, oh, okay, no problem. Let's go to my office. Wow. So that guy is a district manager in the company. And I just started like an informal interview. And I said, you know what? I can't make the decision alone. We are having like a job fair in 2 weeks. Come in 2 weeks. Just come straight to my office. Don't join all the crowd. He gave me his card. Then I went in. Then they asked me, why do you want to work for this company? And I remember one of Tunde's Tash thread said, if you want to work, if they ask you, why do you want to work for this organization? Talk about two things, the role and the company. And I just used that line. The reason I want to work for this company is I've checked out their core values. They align with mine. And I've seen that this role will propel my career to the right direction. That was it. I call that line the killer line. So thank you, Tunde, for what you are doing, for all the resources you've shared for the past 10 years on Twitter. It's amazing. A lot of us cannot come back to say thank you, but I can imagine the number of lives that you've touched. Okay, so I know you've you've been in this entrepreneurship journey for a while, and I know that entrepreneurship can be tough. Have you had any moment where you felt like this thing is looking like a mistake?
Of course. Of
Okay,
course.
right.
Yeah. So yeah, every time, as an entrepreneur, especially when you run a business that is heavily influenced by external policies, right? The business is heavily influenced by external policies, from immigration policies to work policies, all those type of policies, right? It moves your business, and then you look at your revenue line, you look at the revenue line, you know what, have I made the right decision? Right. That's
Decision.
why also as an entrepreneur, you also have to think quick. You also have to think of ways to, mitigate any factor of, I've had to definitely let some of my employees go, right, because of that. And also these are drastic measures that you have to take just to ensure that the sustainability of the business continues to, go through the right direction. I myself have also had to take on some consulting, things on the side, just so that I can also continue with that sustainability as well. Because at the end of the day, you just realize, what, we're all humans. You make the right decision, you make the wrong decision, but what matters most is not stopping and continuing moving, right? You just continue that move, regardless of what it takes at that point in time for you to, just continue with what you're trying to build. So yeah, for sure, there's been cases when, I just wake up, I just say, who sent me? This, because for many founders will tell you there's something they call it the founder's curse, where, somebody who likes to build stuff, who has an idea, sees something like, oh, actually, I can do that. It's just a founder's curse, because you always think you need to build something. You always think that, yeah, I can continue to do this as an entrepreneur. But at the end of the day, for some people, they just take a chill and just realize that, let me take a pause. Let me first take a pause first and just, see how things play out. Perhaps maybe you go back to 9 to 5, you do your 9 to 5, then you come back again stronger, haven't learned a lot, within the space of what you are building. Yeah. So yeah, and honestly, I always tell my friends that have constant 9 to 5, I always tell them, you have absolutely no idea what you have. You have no idea what you have, and just be happy that you have it. And, because no matter what, in the Yoruba land, we say, Ogata, Ogata, which the business,
Like you are sure that at the end of the day, something is
yeah, you
coming.
get your pay, right? Every 2 weeks, your pay will always come in, right? But for entrepreneurs, it's never like that. And that's why I said, I've made sure I've also made that right decision of getting a consulting on the other side, where I'm like, you know what, at least that helps you to sustain yourself while you're also continuing to build your business.
Amazing. This has been a very rich conversation. Thank you. There's something I didn't mention about Tunde. He's a licensed immigration consultant, and he went to school. Tunde, how many schools have you been to in the last 10
In
years?
Canada. Not so much. I went to Conestoga College. I did human resources management, and then after Conestoga College, I went to CDI College. I did immigration and consulting. And I have 2 licenses. I have my HR license, I have my immigration license, and I'm also now currently at York University doing Masters of Public Policy Administration and Law. So yeah, so not so much school in Canada, just 3.
Right. So we were talking about how policies can really impact your kind of business, and I can just imagine what has happened in the last 2 years in Canada. Talking about immigration policies, we've seen some drastic policy changes. Like, I think this year I was reading an article that was saying there are about 2 million temporary residents that will likely is the word out of status or something.
Yes.
Yeah, and we are not accepting immigrants at that same rate that the country was accepting 2019, 2020. What would you say is the future of immigration in Canada? Like short term, long term, do you think Canada will still be open to immigrants like they've always been?
That's a very good question. That's a very good question. So prior to when we came, the immigration was quite sustainable in the sense that it was just gradual. It wasn't like the kind of numbers we saw sometimes around 2018 when things started to really spike up, 2018, 19, 2020. This is a time when immigration began to really, really spike, right? But prior before we came, the numbers I would say were gradual, right? But something also happened though before we came. There were also folks who were in the immigration business who also didn't see a need to stay in it anymore, right? And some of them just walked out of it. Some of them saw that. Some of them said, you know what, Canada was not as open as it used to be, maybe a decade before, right? And then they left such business, right? They left the immigration space. However, the spike came around 2018, like I said, up until around 2022, when the decline started to come, right? So what has also happened is there's been a shift. So it's like that, valley goes up and then like that mountain, it goes up, then it comes back to the valley, then it goes up, right? Which has happened in the past 2 decades. So what will happen in the next few years is there will still be a spike. When that spike will come is when we really don't know.
You don't
And
know.
question is, will there be people like us, or will there still be folks who are so much interested in continuing to be in that line of business? Will we still be here when that spike comes up? That's the question, right? And you will see that Canada's population has been steady in the past 2, 3 years since
2 years.
exactly since
Yeah.
immigration has really slowed down. And many of it is, it ties back to a lot of things. Economy, the economy, there's been a lot of conversation around, from the opposition party stating that the economy is what it is also because of immigration, and a lot of these things like that sort of tie into each other, right? So what this also means and indicates is, should the economy come back very strong in a couple of years to what everybody wants it to be, there are a lot of jobs, there are a lot of high-paying jobs. People are earning what they're supposed to earn. Gas price is low. Groceries are not that expensive and whatnot. If all these things come back to normal without anybody talking so much about it, what that means is there's a lot of housing as well. Immediately immigration gets back to its normal numbers, nobody's going to be looking at it anymore, right? Because now everybody seems to be happy with the economy, right? But the reason why there was so much talk about immigration and whatnot also was because many people also felt the economy is what it is because we've allowed too many people to come in, which also means that should we get back to what everybody wants to see and immigration gets back to what it used to be, it means that nobody's going to talk about it anymore, right? It is really those timelines we don't know, right? As you can see, Prime Minister Makani has been doing a lot of bilateral meetings, trying to bring on some new partners from Europe to Asia and to all these places, right? Just to ensure that, hey, Canada gets back to that stronghold. If our neighbor up north are not necessarily willing to work with us, right? So yeah, exactly. So I would say we might get back to what it used to be. It's that timeline that we really cannot say this is when it's going to get back.
Yeah, and I agree with you. That's a very great response. I think it's a chicken and egg situation for the leaders. Like I pray for Makani every time because I think he took that position not just for any reason, but out of love, and because this guy is okay.
Okay, true.
It probably just is okay, and it will still be okay. But it took that position at a very, very critical time for the country because we are just going through post-COVID era.
Yeah.
Unfortunately for us, our neighbors in up north, they came up with some not so great policies. And here we are fighting immigration and all that. So I pray for him and I wish him all the best. So I would like to go shortly, but I want to quickly take you back to something I would like to ask you. Would you say that building your social capital online really helped you at the point where you were founding your company? Because you have, I don't know how many followers you have now across all social media channels, but I think you've built something fantastic for yourself. Would you say that was a leverage? The reason I'm asking is, let's say I have beautiful ideas in my head and I know that this idea can fly. Now, Tunde has almost 1 million followers across social media channels. Tunde also has that idea. Would you say there's a leverage for Tunde than Paul?
No.
Okay.
So what you also have to understand is this. So there are a lot of founders today that are not on social media, right? They are behind the scene, and their businesses are doing amazingly well with the way they are running it, and even with capital, with traction, with the number of users they have, right? So building your social capital is very good for you as a person. It doesn't necessarily translate to money for your business. Yes, in the early days of launching my business, again, because a lot of people were seeking for immigration services, settlement services, and they will usually find those information online, through threads that we will do and whatnot. So that brought that traction so much, right? It's still there. That capital is still there. However, there's not so much buzz on immigration like it used to be, right? The number of retweets or likes or the number of shares you will get when you will post an immigration thread many years ago is not what you will get today. Also, because there's now an invention of AI where people can actually be chatting, put their profile in and chat with ChatGPT or Claude, and it will actually give them what they need, the consulting services that you also would have provided. And to be honest, yes, there are some specific cases where you still have to work with a consultant. Yeah, and those are people that know the value of a consultant and say, I will go ahead with that person. But going back to the question in terms of digital footprint or the social capital or digital capital. So my business will not necessarily do well because I have more followers than you that don't have followers. What matters more is the structure that you have, right? Let's say, for instance, now I don't have any money for marketing, right? And I don't have any money to pay any influencer. Maybe I'm just the influencer that is launching the business myself, and I launch it. There's a cap and a limit to the people that I can work, that can attract, except I want to work with other influencers. But let's just assume I have no money, zero capital for marketing, and I just run it just based on me. Then you, who nobody knows you online, you don't have any follower, but you have capital.
I need to pay.
Thank you very much. You have money for ads. You have money for 10 other influencers who are like me, who you have paid and brought on board. Guess who's going to have more traction? You will have more traction, not me. Right? So, but if it's just on the surface level, just say we just share it as we are, for sure, the person who has more followers will definitely have more traction. It doesn't also necessarily mean it to translate to money. But originally, the person will have more traction in terms of inquiries and whatnot, but it doesn't now mean the person will have much money. So, but having followers online, having that visual representation is very key, very important. I would say what it has done for me mostly is the social capital, quote and unquote, and the network it has given me beyond just money and the business leverage, right? That's what it has given me, right? I feel like my name has opened doors in places where I didn't even know that they knew me, right? I went to the High Commission. A friend of mine took me to the High Commission in Lagos, in Nigeria at one time, and we first met with a senior trade officer before we went to the office of the Deputy High Commission. Funny how I met that senior trade officer that day. I introduced myself. He said, "Don't worry, I know you already."
Don't worry.
You need no introduction. How do you know me? You're not Nigerian.
Know me.
You're Canadian, but you're here working in Nigeria. But so how do you know me? It's like, no, don't worry. I follow you on Twitter. I think you follow. He said yes, and then he brought out his phone, and I saw him, and I followed him. I said, wow. I didn't show so much expression there, but in my mind, I was like, you know what? This is what
is powerful.
This is what the platform has done for me, right? It's been able to put me in rooms where typically I wouldn't, have thought I would be at when I came in as an international student, right? And that's why it's always important for those who can. I usually don't encourage people that you must. Mine is if you can, share. And you're okay with being online, with being visible, share your story. There are people out there that you never know leverage on, and there's something it does for you as well, right? It's a social currency, it's a digital currency that you can leverage on, right? And there are a couple of partnerships that will also come just because you have those number of followings, right? So yeah.
Wow, great conversation. So many questions are coming to mind, but we can't handle everything in a day. Thank you so much, Tunde.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for everything you've shared.
Awesome.
Thank you for being a trailblazer in the
Thank you so
community.
much.
You've done so well for us. You are such an inspiration.
Thank you, sir.
So, any last word for someone listening to you right now? And if you don't mind,
Yes.
how they can contact you, maybe
Sure.
services you would like to.
For sure. So I still do my immigration. For sure, I still represent people every now and then for immigration, from work permit, study visa, PDWP, permanent residency, or whatnot. But I've noticed that I've been working so much also with people who are here in Canada. Before, we used to have so much more clients from outside because, again, the policies favored so much people who were outside who wanted to come and study, right? But now the policy is not so much friendly to people who are here, who are trying to transition to PR. So I've seen that my clientele base has also increased based on that for those who are here who are trying to convert, to permanent residency. But having said that, I still offer those services. I have link on any of my social media that you find me. I have a link there, and that link has my links for requests for consultation. With that on Twitter, either on Instagram, LinkedIn. I recently also started to share some of my stuff on TikTok because somebody was impersonating me there. And I was just like, you know what, if somebody is impersonating you on one platform, the best is you should go to that platform also, so that people will be confused that who is who. And then when they see that, okay, this is actually the right person, that other person will have no choice than to leave, right? Which I now see that the person is no more there anymore. So that's how people can contact me.
Okay. I don't know. I just wanted to ask you, do you offer like mentorship program for upcoming business owners? If you don't do it, maybe you should start thinking about it.
Yeah, I thought about it as one of the things I want to do this year, but it will be after school. So when I'm done school in June, I definitely will want to have like small size cohorts, mentorship programs, be like masterclass programs where I'll bring not just myself, but it will be other business owners that have done really well that I'm connected to through my social media, thankfully, that I know, bring them, people like Toby Wole and the likes, bring them together, have a masterclass session with people who are looking to, similar business that, that I've done and other people have done, and have that done. Yeah.
Amazing. Awesome. If you're not following Tunde Tash, I don't know who you are following online. You can't go wrong following Tunde Tash. Look for him on Instagram, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on TikTok. Thank you so much, Tunde, for sharing your time with us. It's been an amazing time.
It has been thank you. Thank you, Paul.
Okay. Till I come your way again, everyone, stay thriving.